"Everyone, meet my daughter, the dropout." That's what my dad said, right there in front of his coworkers, my classmates, and the dean. He laughed like it was a harmless joke. But I saw the way their smiles froze, the awkward pity in their eyes. I'd spent 4 years fighting to rebuild my life after everything he'd called a failure. And that night, standing in my cap and gown, I decided I wasn't going to stay silent anymore, because when my name was called on stage, he learned exactly who the real disappointment was. Graduation day was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. It was the end of sleepless nights, endless assignments, and the constant pressure to prove I wasn't what my family thought I was. But that morning, as I slipped into my black gown, I already knew the celebration wouldn't be simple. Not with my father there. Not with her, my sister, Emily the golden child, strata student, med school bound, perfect smile, perfect everything. Dad's favorite sentence was, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" When I dropped out of college 3 years ago to take care of Mum during her illness, Dad called it giving up. He told everyone I couldn't handle it. He didn't mention I'd gone back later, worked 2 jobs, finished my degree online, and earned top honors in my class. But I didn't tell him either. Not until graduation day. I wanted to surprise him. I wanted him to finally see I'd made it without his help, without his approval. At the ceremony, my family sat in the second row. Emily was there, of course, front and center. Her arm looped through Dad's. He was bragging about her internship, her research, her amazing future. When I approached, wearing my gown, his smile faltered for a second, then came that tone, the one laced with sarcasm. "Well, look who's here. Guess they let you back in, after all." Emily smirked. "Dad, be nice." He chuckled. "Hey, I'm just joking. I mean, we all thought you'd quit again." I forced a smile. "Not this time." He laughed louder, turning to the people beside him. "This one's my rebel. Our little dropout." The words sliced through me. I wanted to disappear. But then the dean walked up to the podium and began announcing awards. And when he reached my name, Dad's laughter died instantly. The dean's voice echoed through the auditorium. "This year's recipient of the President's Award for Academic Excellence for maintaining the highest GPA in her department and contributing to multiple university-led research projects, Ms. Anna Reynolds." That was me. For a split second, the entire room went silent. Then applause erupted. Cameras flashed. My classmates turned to smile and cheer. I stood up slowly, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out the noise around me. I could feel my father's eyes on me, but I didn't look at him. Not yet. When I reached the stage, the dean shook my hand, beaming. "Congratulations, Anna. You've made this university proud." Proud. That word hit me hard, because it was the one thing I'd never heard from my father. The spotlight was bright, but I could still make out my family's faces in the crowd. Mum was crying softly, clapping through her tears. Emily's smile had vanished. And my dad, he looked like someone had pulled the ground out from under him. After the ceremony, people crowded around to take pictures. Professors, classmates, even the dean wanted a photo. My father lingered near the back, his arms folded, his jaw tight. When the crowd finally thinned, I walked toward him. He forced a laugh. "Well, I'll be damned. You actually pulled it off." "Guess I did," I said quietly. He glanced at the plaque in my hands. "You could have told us you were finishing school. We would have come." I raised an eyebrow. "Would you have, Dad? Or would you have told me not to embarrass the family again?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. No words came out. Mum touched my arm. "Sweetheart, let's just enjoy the night, okay?" But I couldn't. Not after everything. Not after years of being the shadow to my sister's spotlight. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments about which country you're watching this video from. Enjoy the story. That evening, the university hosted a dinner for graduates and their families. My father insisted we attend. "We should celebrate," he said, trying to reclaim control of the narrative. "People will want to meet you now." At the banquet, he introduced himself to every professor, Every dean suddenly so proud of the daughter he'd called a dropout that morning. He laughed too loud, bragged too much, acting as if he'd always believed in me. But his performance slipped when the university president approached our table. "Mr. Reynolds, you must be very proud," the president said warmly. "Your daughter's research grant for next year's innovation program is truly remarkable." Dad blinked. "Grant?" "Yes," the president said, smiling at me. "Anna will be heading our graduate research team starting this fall." The fork slipped from my father's hand, clattering onto the plate. Emily stared at me, her mouth slightly open. I smiled politely. I didn't want to mention it until everything was finalized. My dad tried to laugh it off, but his voice shook. "Well, she's full of surprises." He didn't know the half of it, because what he didn't realize, what no one in that room knew yet, was that the research I'd been doing wasn't just about technology or innovation. It was about family patterns and behavioral inheritance. And in my presentation tomorrow morning, one of the case studies was about him. The next morning, sunlight filtered through my blinds, but I'd been awake for hours. My laptop sat open on the desk, my final slides glowing on the screen. I wasn't just presenting research that day. I was confronting the man who'd spent years defining my worth for me. The topic was the role of parental comparison in adult motivation and emotional resilience. It wasn't meant to be personal, but somehow, it always had been. When I arrived at the university's conference hall, the room was packed: professors, graduate students, sponsors, and even a few journalists. The event was being live-streamed to highlight the top student researchers of the year. I spotted my parents sitting in the front row. Dad looked uncomfortable in his suit, shifting in his chair. Mum smiled nervously, clutching her purse. Emily, of course, wasn't there. She'd left early that morning, too busy to stay another day. As I stepped up to the podium, I took a deep breath. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from anticipation. "Good morning, everyone," I began, my voice steady. "Today, I'll be presenting findings from a 2-year study on how constant comparison within families impacts self-worth and achievement." There was polite applause, and then silence. I clicked to the first slide: childhood data, survey quotes, family case studies. My father's eyes narrowed. He didn't recognize it yet. Then came the final part of the presentation, the part that wasn't in the version he'd seen on my laptop last week. I clicked to the next slide. A quote appeared: "You'll never be good enough, not like your sister." The audience shifted, heads tilted. I could feel the tension ripple across the room. "This," I said carefully, "is a direct statement recorded in one of our participant interviews." The subject, a female student, reported hearing this phrase repeatedly from her parent throughout adolescence. My voice didn't shake. Not once. This participant's experience mirrors the theme found in over 70% of cases we studied. Children who are constantly compared to a sibling developed chronic self-doubt, perfectionism, and anxiety. I paused. And then I clicked again. The next slide showed 2 blurred photographs, a man and his 2 daughters. The faces were obscured, but anyone who knew us could tell. The audience murmured. My dad sat frozen. His hands gripped his knees so tightly his knuckles went white. I looked straight at him. Some of us spend years trying to earn the approval we were told we'd never deserve. But sometimes, what we learn instead is how to succeed without it. A hush fell over the room. You could have heard a pin drop. After a long pause, the dean stood and started clapping. Then others joined. The applause built, wave after wave, echoing through the hall. I felt my throat tighten. I'd done it. Dad didn't clap. He couldn't even look at me. When the presentation ended, I gathered my notes and stepped off the stage. People congratulated me, shaking my hand, asking for interviews. But all I could think about was him sitting there, stone-faced, silent. As I walked past, he finally spoke, his voice low and sharp. "You embarrassed me." I stopped. "No, Dad." I revealed the truth. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. "You think this makes you better than your family? You think this is something to be proud of?" Mum whispered, "John, please," but he cut her off, glaring at me. "This isn't over." He stormed out of the room, leaving behind nothing but whispers. I stood there for a moment, trembling but unbroken, because deep down, I knew he was right about one thing. It wasn't over, not yet. The silence after my father stormed out didn't last long. By that evening, word of my presentation had spread beyond the university. The live stream clip, especially the quote slide, had gone viral on social media. Thousands of views, hundreds of comments, and a flood of messages in my inbox, some from strangers who said my story mirrored theirs. But mixed in were a few from my family. The ones that stung. Emily's message came first. "Nice job turning our family into your therapy session. Hope you're proud." Then Mum called. Her voice was soft, but tense. "Honey, you humiliated your father in front of everyone. He hasn't stopped pacing all day." I swallowed hard. "Mum, I didn't use names. I shared my experience as research." "He knows it was him," she interrupted, "and now the whole town knows too. You should have thought about the consequences." "The consequences of telling the truth?" I asked. There was a long pause on the line. Then, in a small, broken voice, she whispered, "Sometimes the truth hurts more than it helps." And she hung up. That night, the house felt heavier than ever. The glow of my laptop screen was the only light in the room. Notifications kept buzzing, mails from journalists, professors, even organizations wanting to quote my research. But I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet, because I knew my father. He wouldn't just let this go. The next morning, he proved it. I woke up to a voicemail from the university's PR office. "Anna," the woman said carefully, "your father has filed a formal complaint against the university, claiming your presentation violated his privacy and defamed him. We'll need to meet about this." I sat there, frozen. Of course he had. When I arrived at the university, I found the dean already waiting. His expression was calm, but firm. "Anna," he said, "you're not in trouble. Your presentation followed all ethical guidelines, but your father has threatened to go public with accusations that you fabricated your data." I felt my stomach twist. "What? That's not true." He nodded. "I know. But he's persistent, and he has connections." Connections. That was my father's favorite word. He'd built his reputation on charm and influence, and now, he was using it to destroy mine. That evening, I received a text from an unknown number. "You made me look weak. I'll make sure people see who you really are." My heart dropped. I didn't need to ask who sent it. He wasn't just angry, he was desperate. I turned off my phone and sat in silence. I thought of all the years I'd tried to earn his approval, all the times he'd dismissed my success, my effort, my worth, and I realized something. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my voice. If he wanted a war, I'd give him one. But this time, the truth wouldn't just sting, it would shatter him. The following week was chaos. News outlets had picked up the story, labeling it the Dropout's redemption. Comments poured in from across the country, students, parents, teachers, people sharing their own stories of being dismissed or belittled by family. But beneath the praise, there was still tension. My father hadn't backed down. He stopped answering Mum's calls, ignored Emily, and went straight to the media. He painted himself as the victim, a hard-working father whose daughter twisted the truth for attention. I watched his interviews online, each one filled with carefully rehearsed outrage. It was like watching a man audition for a role he'd been playing his whole life. But then, something happened he hadn't planned for. One of my research supervisors, Dr. Lee, called me into her office. When I arrived, she closed the door and handed me a folder. Inside were scanned financial records, emails, and internal memos, all belonging to my father's company. She sighed. "Anna, someone from inside sent these to our department anonymously. I think you should see them." I flipped through the pages. The documents revealed irregularities. Money moved from employee education funds into family accounts. My family's accounts, my scholarship, my sister's private school tuition, even the down payment on my father's second car, all paid from company funds. I sat there in shock. He He used company money for us. Dr. Lee nodded. It appears so. And now, after his recent public complaint, a journalist started looking into it. He may have opened a door he can't close. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. All the years he'd called me irresponsible. All the lectures about working for what you earn. And this is what he'd been doing behind closed doors. The irony was almost poetic. A few days later, the story broke wide open. Local businessmen accused of misusing company funds. My father's photo was plastered across every local news site. He tried to deny it, of course, but when confronted with evidence, he stepped down for personal reasons. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel angry. I just felt free. That night, I visited Mum. She opened the door with tears in her eyes. "He's been hiding for days," she said quietly. "He knows what he did." We sat together at the kitchen table, where years of awkward family dinners had taken place. The air was heavy, but for the first time, honest. Mum reached across the table, taking my hand. "I'm sorry I didn't protect you better, Anna. You deserved more than what we gave you." I smiled softly. "You did your best, Mum. That's all that matters now." A week later, I stood in front of my class as a guest lecturer, presenting my updated research. My final slide read, "Resilience doesn't come from being perfect, it comes from being told you're not enough, and deciding to prove it wrong." The room erupted in applause, and as I looked out at the faces of students who reminded me so much of my younger self, unseen, but still, fighting, I realized something. The story wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming the truth from the people who tried to bury it. That evening, I walked out of the university into the golden light of sunset. My phone buzzed with one new message from my father. It said only 5 words. "I saw your lecture. Congratulations." I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because for once in my life, he wasn't the one defining me. I was.